Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Donald Trump has arrived back in the United States to near universal criticism of his meeting with President Vladimir Putin. In a news conference after that meeting with the Russian president, Trump suggested he trusted him over America's own intelligence services, following Mr. Putin's assertion there was no Russian meddling in the 2016 US election. Well, later today, Donald Trump will meet senior Republicans. Some have even accused the president of treasonable behavior. From Washington, our US correspondent Cordelia Lynch sent this report.
Donald Trump's trip may be over, but the outrage it sparked has only just taken flight. In Helsinki, the president refused to publicly challenge Vladimir Putin about election meddling. Fox News presenter Chris Wallace did, repeatedly pressing the Russian leader, armed with recent indictments.
I have here the indictment that was presented on Friday from the special counsel Robert Mueller. May I give this to you to look at, sir? Here?
I really wish for your American listeners to listen to what I say. First of all, Russia, as a state, has never interfered with the internal affairs of the United States, let alone its elections.
On the same network, America's president offered support, claiming the probe into Russian interference was the real problem, not Putin.
I will tell you, it's driven a wedge between us and Russia. Maybe we've just knocked down that wedge, but it has driven a wedge. And President Putin said that. One of the early things he said when we started, he said, it's really a shame because we could do so much good.
On stage, he went even further, implying he believed the word of America's longtime adversary over his own intelligence aides.
I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this, I don't see any reason why it would be. So I have great confidence in my intelligence people, but I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today.
That sparked instant alarm among those listening in on Capitol Hill.
The fact that Donald Trump appeared to side with Vladimir Putin at this critical moment over America's own intelligence agencies has proved too much for some Republicans.
Putin only understands strength, and I did not think this was a good moment for our country.
Donald Trump will claim he's made progress with another historic foe. But as he defended Moscow, his Justice Department charged another Russian with spying, and his own party is deeply unsettled. Cordelia Lynch, Sky News, Washington.
Well, with me now are Sir Jeremy Greenstock, of course, senior British diplomat, former UK ambassador to the UN, and Erica Miller from Republicans Overseas. Welcome to you both. Yeah. Jeremy Greenstock, what do you make of what happened yesterday in Helsinki?
Extremely interesting to see the new play between Presidents Trump and Putin. I think that Donald Trump is making a genuine attempt to forge a relationship internationally with President Putin, which I regard as a good thing. Whether he's doing it naively and taking too much from President Putin at face value is a question that is now being researched. And it's a question that has to be asked because Russia is not a natural friend of the West or the United States.
What about taking the word of President Putin, who after all has a bit of a track record, over the word of all your security agencies?
I'm reaching for a bit of a drop of salt here to throw in what President Putin has said. The American agencies clearly have some evidence, but President Trump is making a confusion between meddling in the election and collusion over the election. He wants to bat away the accusation of collusion, for which there is no known evidence yet. Meddling is something that the Russians regularly do in other people's elections. They've done it in ours, they've done it in European ones. I would have thought it was very unusual for the Russians not to show an interest in the 2016 election.
Some Republicans are echoing the words of a former security official, this could be treasonable behavior.
Well, that's quite surprising. I mean, we all know that President Trump has a unique style. He's not a polished politician, and that's why people like him. But that's also why people don't like him.
That's a bit of an excuse, isn't it?
Oh, come on, he has his brashness, and he's not polished. He, will throw a grenade in the room, backpedal a little bit, and, will eventually achieve results. So we've seen that happen with NATO. There was fantastic results in NATO, with the other countries agreeing to up their spending to 2%. And the whole reason of that being so important is to protect ourselves against the competitors like Putin.
And how would you feel if you were in the NSA or the FBI or the CIA, having someone that you've been investigating who is on your list of enemies, having his word taken over your word? Don't forget there is this indictment, as we saw Chris Wallace handing to him there.
It's sort of the classic Trump.
But what does it achieve other than to undermine those agencies of the United States?
It's interesting to say that, because I don't really think that he was potentially speaking kind of the way that he maybe intended to speak. Again, he has this way of throwing out a grenade in the room, like I'm saying. I mean, he doesn't always kind of talk in the most polished manner. So, you need to kind of take it with a grain of salt.
I mean, with all due respect, if you look at the pictures of that news conference yesterday, he didn't look like an attacker, someone who was confidently throwing out a grenade. He looked like a pupil, basically, of Putin, someone who had been brought to heel, who was cringing, to use the word of The Guardian this morning.
Well, look at the intention of the whole summit to begin with. The relationship with Russia, as he said at the beginning, was at a low point. The whole intention of this meeting was to strengthen that relationship and move forward.
At the expense of NATO, the Skripals and everyone else?
No, not at all. Not at all. NATO is supporting that. So, did he say some things that were inappropriate? Absolutely. And that's Trump being Trump. And we know that's going to happen when he's on a public stage like that. But we need to start focusing on his policies and what he's doing to move forward.
Do you think he knows what he's doing?
No, I don't think he understands fully the consequences of what he says and what he does. I think it's not just his style, but his tactic to disrupt, not to worry about the consequences of what he says, and then see whether the situation he creates can be taken advantage of. I think he focuses, in terms of foe and friend, too much on trade surpluses and trade deficits. Germany is a foe because it has a trade surplus. America is looking for friends who also have deficits they need to mend. This is much too narrow a world view for the world superpower.
I mean, what are the consequences? Because, you look at New York Times this morning, which I know is very critical of him, but their leading columnist, Thomas Friedman, talks about Putin and Trump versus America. David Brooks is actually saying it's more serious than this. It's an attempt really to dismantle the post-war settlement of alliances, multilateral alliances involving Europe, as indeed has been said by Mr. Kagan in the Washington Post. Do you accept those analyses?
No, I don't think it's his intention to dismantle. I think he doesn't care very much about them.
He says the EU's a foe. He used that word.
I know. But he's using it to disrupt. He's got you interested, Adam. He's using it to disrupt. He's looking to mend the American trade deficit in a very naive way, in my view, because the superpower, the dollar, can stand a deficit and it's good for the rest of the world. Trade, open trade, is good for the rest of the world.
He doesn't think that.
He doesn't understand the advantages to America. Many Americans do understand that and are worried about it.
What do you think? Is free trade a good thing or a bad thing?
No, I mean, it can't be a bad thing. I mean, having a good free trade agreement.
Free trade could be a bad thing, yeah.
But I think trade is better than no trade, right? So I think free trade is something we should start working towards, particularly when it comes to the UK and the US, with the US being the largest investor in the UK, being over $1 trillion invested in each other's economies, over 150 billion pounds a year of annual trade. To have a free trade between US and UK would be very advantageous.
So why is he imposing tariffs on steel producers, including UK steel producers?
Well, again, he's trying to make up the trade deficit. So just as...
the battle, yeah, we don't... You know, the battle is with China over steel. It's not with the European Union and the UK.
Well, and he's also, you know, trying to work on his agenda of America First. So he's trying to get people back to work in the U.S., making sure that it's the steel producers in the U.S. who are getting the work and not people buying, you know, buying somewhere else. He's trying to make it more of a level playing field. And
there's no doubt about it, he wants Brexit, doesn't he? He thinks that would be a good thing for America.
He thinks it would be a good thing for the UK because that's what the UK people voted on, and that's diplomacy, or sorry, that's democracy, and that, you know, the UK people ultimately voted for Brexit, whether you liked it or whether you didn't.
He'd prefer Boris Johnson as Prime Minister.
I don't think that's necessarily the case. I think he's saying he has a lot of potential to be one, but he has a great relationship with Theresa May. He came out very publicly and says he supports her and he supports the will of the British people. Oh, well, that's, you know, you only heard a portion of the story from what I've heard. So he very publicly came up and said there is another side of it.
We've heard the tapes of the interview, and he said what he said, didn't he?
You're giving, Adam, a very naked presentation of something that's very strong in the American approach, which is a big focus on two large things, power and money.
And crucially, for us as allies, America first. And America first means America first. Everybody else are collateral, right?
I've never been emotional or soft about the relationship with America. It's not special. You have to earn a good relationship with the United States.
Or pay for it, in Trump's case.
They are a very hard-hearted people. And in our normal transactions with America as diplomats, we recognize that. We have to bring something to the table. We have to grow our economy. We have to make sure that the relationship is based on things that the Americans will accept, that has a real chance of increasing that bilateral relationship that Erica is talking about, and for that we need to strengthen our own economy and our own position in the world.
So, I mean, you know, nothing necessarily wrong with it. He is President of the United States, but it is America first, and everyone else can get lost.
America first, but not America only. And he's saying America first and a strong American economy is good for the rest of the world as well.
OK, thank you both very much indeed.
This has not gone down well.
I have great confidence in my intelligence people. But I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial today. And what he did is an incredible offer. He offered to have the people working on the case come and work with their investigators with respect to the 12 people. I think that's an incredible offer.
Right, press conference there with Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump in Helsinki, and it has caused a little bit of an explosion, particularly stateside. Tell us what happened.
So this is interesting. One of the big unknowns about Donald Trump is he says outrageous stuff quite often, but Republicans tend not to publicly criticise him, in part because there are midterms coming up this autumn, and lots of them think, well, they want his supporters to turn out for him when they're up for re-election. The response yesterday was pretty extraordinary. You had John McCain, you had Paul Ryan, you had Newt Gingrich, former heads of the CIA, calling it treason and outrageous and saying that Russia isn't an ally. The response is quite remarkable.
Yes.
Donald Trump's finally found the thing which will... and he's tried an awful lot of other things as well, but he's finally found the thing that will upset Republicans.
Yeah, so plenty of critics, but now even his own side is reacting. Drew Lickerman is here from Republicans Abroad. Is Trump a traitor for seeming to side with Putin over US law enforcement agencies?
Well, I mean, off the bat, that's a ridiculous question. The people calling him treasonous are people like John Brennan, who voted for the Communist Party. But back to Trump's actual comments, you know, which is more important is, look, I'm not a hypocrite. I criticized Barack Obama when he whispered in Putin's ear, saying, I have more flexibility after the election. I criticized Hillary Clinton's reset button. And, you know, I'll say the same thing about Donald Trump's comments. I agree completely with what Newt Gingrich's statement was, that I think Trump should walk back them, or he should clarify them. I think the meeting could have been important if really distracted from something that, you know, could have been meaningful. I think Trump has done very good steps at clamping down on Putin, but this is, you know, I do think this comment was inappropriate.
Right, so it was a mistake.
Look, like I said, I'd like to see Trump clarify it or comment further on it, but no, this comment was, you know, I can't say I support this comment.
Right, well, let's have a look at other reaction in the States, particularly from broadcasters who are normally very loyal.
That was quite something, almost surreal at points, as the president was relitigating the election of 2016 and making the case again that there was no collusion.
Yeah, it's a stunning and disappointing revelation here today.
It was not a very forceful presentation from President Trump with Putin standing right next to him.
I don't know.
Not forceful at all.
I'll give the benefit of the doubt to maybe jet lag and time differences, but holy.
He should have defended his own intelligence community. Or just don't take the meeting. Don't go to Helsinki if you can't look the guy in the eye and tell him what's what.
We've never seen an American president do this, stand on a stage with a Russian, former KGB, and kind of compare our intelligence community to the Russians.
Today was a new low, even for Donald Trump.
Wow. Drew, what do you say?
Well, look, I mean, my comment stands the same, that, you know, I don't support Trump's comment, and, you know, I think he should, like exactly what Newt Gingrich said, this is probably his biggest political mistake so far, and that he should either walk back it or should clarify it. And look, I'm not going to say that I support the comment he made. I think it really detracted from, you know, we don't really know what happened at the meeting, but it detracted from what could have been somewhat of a productive meeting. And, yeah, I mean, I don't know what else much there is to say.
Drew, nothing happened at the meeting, and Putin laughed all the way back to the Crimea. Trump said it was a deep and meaningful conversation. Is he even capable of having a deep and meaningful conversation? Well, and if there was a deep and meaningful conversation, what positive came out of that? What have we heard?
Well, look, I mean, Trump, like I've said before, Trump has clamped down on Russia harder than any of his predecessors. He's expelled Russians from the U.S. He's closed down compounds. He's slapped sanctions on various oligarchs. He's banned Russian technology from being used in government offices. He's bombed bases in Syria that have Russian fighter jets on them, something ridiculous. I mean, I know, that's what I'm saying.
Then he goes to Helsinki and makes disparaging comments about his own intelligence services.
Exactly. So I just said, I wish Trump would focus on, you know, highlighting, you know, some of the positive things he's done on that. And, you know, I feel like this meeting could have been something that it could have been handled over a phone call or something. I think, you know, I think logistically, you know,
not at all.
Well, the U.S. and Russia have, even during the height of the Cold War, maintained communication. During the Obama administration, they maintained communications. No one's saying the same about China, who's, you know, we have Huawei and Hisense, which could very well be stealing U.S. information. We have China that interfered in our election in 1998, backing Al Gore. And
but Drew,
no one said the same about China.
The optics look terrible. I mean, you heard all the reaction there from people who are normally uber supportive of Donald Trump. He looked weak standing next to the Russian president. Nadine's just said Vladimir Putin would be laughing all the way back to Crimea. He seemed to accept the denial from Vladimir Putin of any meddling whatsoever. I mean, how did it look to you?
Yeah, I mean, look, Trump got played by Putin. I think it was just quite obvious. I think sometimes people have looked at what Trump's done in his international diplomacy, you know, from Kim Jong-un to what he's done with the NATO to now with Putin, and they've sort of thought, oh, there's be some method to his madness. I don't think there is. He's got this weird, like, eyeball to eyeball.
Madness.
Yeah, it is madness.
Don't call me Trump again.
But it only shows that last week when he was here and Theresa May was caught holding hands with him again.
Well, I think he holds her hand, doesn't he?
Well, I mean, she's still holding it back, right? It takes two. But I mean, I think the point is about this idea that somehow we were going to get closer to America. America's going to give us some kind of great trade deal and we, you know, move away from the EU, be closer friends with America. I mean, we're dealing with a loose cannon here. We cannot accept that that's going to. There's no chance that that's going to happen. Looking at Trump's behaviour so far.
Drew, how significant do you think that backlash is? Is this just a blip in the relationship between the Republicans and Trump, or will this be seen as a turning point where the people who've been loyal stop being so loyal?
Right. Well, I mean, like I just said, this is the first major policy thing that, you know, it's not a gotcha. This is the first major policy thing that I've said Trump should seriously walk this back.
But how damaging is it? I mean, you know, broadly, is this the beginning of support fading away?
U.S. politics, if anyone tells you they know the answer to that in this day and age, they're lying to you.
Same as British.
We'll all be mad together.
Yeah, I don't want to, like, I generally just have no, you know, something had happened tomorrow and then that's the news story and everyone forgets about this. So U.S. politics is just very crazy right now. So it's, you know, I'm not going to lie to you one way or the other and say that I know exactly how this is going to affect U.S. politics.
All right, Drew. Well, you're not alone in that. Thank you very much for coming in.